Chapter 8. I am giving birth to you, my angel. Viktor Chadkov, an entrepreneur, awoke at dawn. His girlfriend lay beside him in the big bed, still asleep. The thin blanket hugged the contours of her delicate figure. Every time they attended formal receptions together or went to some fancy resort hotel, her body attracted men's envious or lustful glances. Not only that, but Inga, as this sleeping beauty was called, possessed a most charming smile and gave the impression on those around her of being a smart and educated woman. Viktor took such great pleasure in her company that he bought a second 4-bedroom flat, furnished it with ultra-modern pieces, and gave Inga the keys. Occasionally, if his intensive business schedule allowed, he would spend a night or two with her. He was grateful to this 25-year-old woman for these marvelous nights they spent together and the opportunity to chat with her, but he had no plans to marry her. He had no special feelings of love for her, and besides, he knew which side his bread was buttered on. After all, he was 38, and she 25. Naturally, it would not be long for this young woman to start hankering for a younger man, and with her body and brains, that would not be too difficult to find. She would find a younger and even richer man, all thanks to him. After all, if he married her, he would also be introducing her to a circle of influential businessmen. Inga turned her face toward him, smiling in her sleep. The blanket had slipped down just enough to expose one of her alluring, so perfectly shaped feminine breasts. Oh, Vladimir and his boobs. But this time, Viktor Chadov experienced none of his usual stimulation at the sight of her half-naked body. He carefully replaced the blanket on his sleeping partner. Silently trying not to wake her, he got up from the bed and headed out to the kitchen. He made some coffee and poured himself a cup. Lighting a cigarette, he began pacing the spacious breakfast room floor, practically oblivious to his surroundings. What a dream! His feelings were still aroused by last night's extraordinary dream. Yeah, his feelings, rather than his mind. Viktor had dreamt that he was walking along a shady alley, concentrating on the feasibility of a routine commercial deal. Behind and in front of him walked his bodyguards. He was irritated at their presence and had a hard time concentrating. His attention was also distracted by the constant noise of traffic along the edge of the park. Then all of a sudden his bodyguards disappeared and the traffic noise died down, and he could hear the birds singing. He could see the marvelous spring foliage on the trees lining the alley and the flowers on the bushes. He stopped and delighted in the soft and pleasant feelings welling up inside of him. He felt better than he had ever had before in his life. All at once he noticed far down the A-L-L-E with apostrophe E, alley, I have no idea, a little boy running toward him. The sunlight was shining from behind, giving him a kind of halo, and it almost seemed as though here, running toward him, was a little angel. A moment later it dawned on him that this was none other than his own little son. The lad's hands and feet were in constant, energetic motion. With a joyful premonition, Viktor squatted down and threw open his arms to embrace him, while his little son, in turn, threw open his arms on the run. But then all at once the boy stopped in his tracks, about 3 meters shy of Viktor. The smile faded from the youngster's face, and the look in his eyes made Viktor's heart start to pound. Come on, come to me. Come, let me hug you, son. The boy answered with a wry smile. There's no way you can do that, Papa. Why not? Viktor asked in surprise. Because, the boy answered with a tone of sadness, you can't hug me, Papa, because you can't hug a son which hasn't been born. After all, you didn't give birth to me, Papa. Then you come and hug me, son. Come on. I can't hug a father who didn't give birth to me. The boy tried to smile through his tears. A tear was already trickling down his red cheek. Then the boy turned, hung his head, and slowly wandered off down the alley. But Victor was still standing there on his knees, rooted to the spot. The boy kept getting further and further away, as did the soft and pleasant feeling Victor had had a moment ago. Once again, from the distance, it seemed, he could hear the roar of traffic. Unable to move, Victor summoned up his remaining strength and called out, "Don't leave me. Where are you going, son?" The youngster turned, and he could see another tear trickling down his face. "I'm going into the nowhere, Papa, into the infinite nowhere." The lad hung his head without saying a word, and then he added, "I'm sad, Papa. I'm sad that I wasn't born, and so I cannot restore your life with myself." With head lowered, the little angel receded into the distance and presently disappeared, literally dissolving into the sun's rays. The dream ended, but the impressions of the marvelous, soft, and pleasant sensations lingered on. It was as though they were summoning Victor to take action. After finishing his third cigarette, Victor extinguished it firmly and decisively. He rushed into the bedroom, calling out loudly on the way, "Wake up, Inga, wake up." "I'm not asleep," answered the beautiful girl from the bed. "Just lying here, lolling about. I've been wondering where you disappeared to." "Inga, I want you to have a child. Could you have a son with me?" She threw off the blanket and leapt out of bed. She ran over to him, flung her arms around his neck, and pressed against him with every inch of her supple and beautiful body. Then, in a hot whisper, she confided, "The most delightful and beautiful declaration of love is when a man asks a woman to bear his child. Thank you. That is, if you're not just joking." "I'm not joking," he replied firmly. Putting on a bathrobe, Inga responded, "Well, if you're not joking, if you're serious, that is, this is a decision we need to think through. First, I want my future child to have a father, but you, my dearly beloved, are still married." "I'll get a divorce," Victor promised. In fact, he had already divorced his wife 3 months before, but for a variety of reasons had not yet told Inga the news. "Once you get your divorce, then we can start talking about a child. But I'll tell you right off, Victor, even if you get divorced, it's still too early to think about children. In the first place," Inga reasoned, half in jest, half serious, "I need a year still to finish graduate school. Secondly, I'm so tired of studying that once I finish, I'd like to take another year just to fool around, make the rounds of a few resorts, and have a good time. So if you're talking about a child, well, children could put an end to that little plan once and for all." "Okay, I was joking," Victor interrupted her rambling train of thought. "I've got to go. Got an important meeting coming up. I've already called for my car. So long." He left, but it was not for any meeting, and he had not called for any car. Victor walked slowly down the sidewalk, giving the once-over to every woman he met. He was viewing them through new eyes, a view he himself was not accustomed to. He was trying to pick out a woman who might be worthy of bearing him a son, a woman he felt that he could have a child with. Immediately, all the stylish girls with heavy makeup, who had earlier attracted his attention, fell away. He had completely lost interest in all the girls who dressed in tight-fitting clothes or semi-nude in mini bikini tops to show off their figure. It's clear why they do that. It's what's on their minds, he thought to himself. Then they try putting on an intelligent expression on their face. They use various body parts to attract men, and maybe someone will bite. And they do bite, of course, only not to have kids. It's a bite for a shag, no procreation there. Go on, dummies, wiggle your behinds. I'm not going to let any wigglers like that have my child. 2 girls he happened to notice coming toward him were smoking as they walked, and one of them was holding in her hand an open bottle of beer. Now they are the kind that are absolutely no good for having children. Only an idiot would want to have a child with that sort. Another thing Victor noticed was that very few of the women and girls he saw were really healthy looking. Some were slouching, Others had an expression on their face that made them look as though they were suffering from stomach cramps. Still others showed definite signs of either obesity or anorexia. Nope, wouldn't do to have children with them, Victor thought to himself. Wow, looks like every one of these women is dreaming of a prince sidling up to them in a white Mercedes, and yet they themselves couldn't do the most basic thing for that prince. In their own unhealthy state, they couldn't possibly give him a healthy child. Victor did not bother to call his driver. Instead, he went to his office on the trolley bus, still looking up and down every woman his eyes fell upon, trying to find among their number one who was worthy to bear his child, but to no avail. All day long, including during his lunch break, and when he was alone in his office, he could not stop thinking about the woman who was to give him a son. At times he had the impression of looking for a woman he himself could be born from. At long last, he came to a conclusion. If an ideal partner could not be found, she would have to be created. For this, he would need to find more or less a healthy young woman with an attractive, or at least not repulsive, appearance, one with a good character, and arrange for her to have all sorts of training and health improvement exercises in the best sanatoriums. But the main thing would be to send her off to be tutored in all top educational institutes, one where she could learn about preparing for pregnancy, carrying the child to term, and the birthing process itself, as well as basic preschool education. At the end of his working day, he called in his firm's lawyer, Valentina Petrovna, a woman who had been made wiser by the school of hard knocks. He invited her to have a seat and began in a roundabout way. I have a bit of an unusual question for you. It's rather personal, but it's very important to me. A cousin of mine asked me to make an inquiry for her. Anyway, she's planning on getting married soon. She asked me to find out where she can locate an educational institution in our country for women to study up on the best way to carry their pregnancy, as well as which birth process and subsequent child raising involves, and what the role of the father should be in this. Valentina Petrovna listened intently. When he finished, she thought for a while before saying, "You know, Victor Nikolaevich, I have 2 children, and I've always been interested in literature on birthing and the raising of children, but I have never even heard of that kind of school, either in our country or abroad." Strange. They teach everything nowadays, and yet this most important issue isn't touched in either high schools or post-secondary institutions. I wonder why. Yes, it is strange, Valentina agreed. I've never really thought about it before, but now the state of affairs does seem strange to me. The State Duma, it looks like, doesn't shy away from discussing the topic of sex education in schools, but the question of teaching how to give birth to and bring up children is not even raised. So that means that every couple is obliged to experiment on their own child? That's what it boils down to, replied Valentina. An experiment. There are, of course, a wide variety of courses teaching parents what to do at birthing time, how to handle newborns, but there's no scientific basis underlying the process, and it's pretty nigh impossible to decide which courses are really going to help and which are harmful. Did you take any courses yourself, Valentina? Well, for our younger daughter, I decided on a home birth in the bathtub with the help of a midwife. A lot of women are doing that today. People believe that it's more comfortable for a child to make its appearance in the world in a home environment, in the presence of family. They say newborns can tell when people treat them with love, as opposed to just simply indifference, which is what you get in many maternity wards. It's like a conveyor belt there, after all. Victor did not find his conversation with Valentina all that encouraging. In fact, it depressed him. For 2 whole weeks, he spent all his free time thinking about the problem of childbirth. For 2 whole weeks, as he walked about the city on foot, visiting high-class restaurants, bars, and theaters, he would give probing looks into women's faces. He even went out into the countryside, but could not find anyone suitable for him there either. One day, he parked his Jeep near a teacher's college and peered through the Jeep's tinted glass windows at the girls passing by. After 3 hours, he noticed a young woman coming down the steps with her hair tied back and a short, light brown braid. She had a stately figure and, as it seemed to him, an intelligent-looking face. As she walked past his Jeep on the way to the bus stop, Victor rolled down his window and hailed her. "Excuse me, please, miss. You see, I've been waiting for my friend here, and I can't wait any longer. If you could show me the best route to the center of town, I'd be happy to give you a lift home after that if you'd like." The girl looked at the Jeep, assessing the situation, then quietly answered, "Sure, why not? I'll show you." After she got into the front seat and they had introduced themselves, the girl pointed to the pack of cigarettes on the dashboard and said, "You've got some nice cigarettes there. Mind if I have a smoke?" "Help yourself," replied Victor. He was just as glad when his mobile phone rang at that moment. No important message, but when he hung up, Victor put on a worried face and told the girl, who by now was aggressively puffing on a cigarette, "Something's come up. I've got to get to an urgent business meeting. You'll have to excuse me." With that, he let the girl out on the sidewalk, cigarette in hand, after deciding there was no way he was going to let his son be poisoned by tobacco smoke. All during those 2 weeks, Victor did not meet up with his girlfriend at all. He did not even ring her up. He had decided that if she did not want to have a child with him, all she wanted to do was have a good time and hang around fancy resorts. He had no use for her. Certainly it had been fun spending time with this beautiful and intelligent woman, but now his life plans had taken a completely different turn. "I'll leave her the flat," Victor decided. "After all, this woman did spice up my life for a while." He headed over to the university Inga attended to give her his keys to the apartment. On the way there, he rang her up on his mobile. "Hi, Inga." "Hi," came the familiar voice over the telephone. "Where are you now?" "I'm almost at your university. Will you be finished with classes soon?" "I haven't gone to the university for 10 days now. To tell you the truth, I can't see myself going back there anytime soon." "Something happened?" "Yeah." "Where are you now?" "At home." When Victor opened the front door and entered the flat, Inga was lying on the bed in her bathrobe, reading some kind of book. Glancing at Victor, she said without getting up, "There's coffee and sandwiches in the kitchen." Once more she buried her nose in her book. Victor went into the kitchen and took a couple of gulps of coffee. After lighting a cigarette, hypocrite! After lighting a cigarette, he plunked his keys down on the table and went back to the door of the bedroom where Inga was still reading as before. "I'm leaving," he told her. "Maybe for quite a while, maybe for good. I'm leaving you the flat. Goodbye. Take care of yourself and hang loose." And with that, he headed toward the door. Inga caught up with him right away in the doorway. "Hey, wait a minute there, scamp," she said with an upbeat tone, tugging at Victor's sleeve. "You're leaving me, eh? You turned my whole life upside down, and now it's goodbye?" Now how have I turned your life upside down?" Victor asked in surprise. "You gave me a good surprise, and I bet it wasn't too bad for you either. Now you have a flat all to yourself and a closet full of clothes. Take care of yourself. Have fun the way you wanted to. Or is it more money that you want?" "You know, you really are a scamp. Come on. First you spit on my soul, and you carry on about the flat, clothes, and having fun? Hey, take it easy. Don't make a scene. I've got important business to attend to. Goodbye." Victor reached for the door handle, but Inga once again held him back, grabbing hold of his arm. "Not so fast, darling. Hold on a moment. There's something I want you to tell me. Did you ask me to bear a child for you, or did you not?" "I asked, and you said no." "Yeah, I said no at first. Then I thought about it for a couple of days, and I changed my mind. I quit graduate school. I quit smoking. I work out every morning. Now I've got a hold of these books about life and children. I can't put them down. Here I am reading up on the best way to have a child, and he says, goodbye. I can't imagine anyone but you as the father of our..." When Inga's words finally sunk in, Victor gave her a boisterous hug, whispering her name over and over again. Then he hoisted her in his arms and carried her into the bedroom. Tenderly, as though handling the most precious treasure, he laid her down on the bed and began tearing off his clothes. With greater passion than ever before, he embraced her as she lay on the bed. He began kissing her shoulders and breasts, and at the same time trying to remove her bathrobe. But all at once his efforts were met with a silent protest, and she began to push him away. "Hey, calm down there, please," Inga said to him. "That's not the way. To put it in a nutshell, I'm not going to have sex with you today, or tomorrow, or a month from now." "What do you mean, no sex? Didn't you just tell me you agreed to have a child?" "That's what I said." "How can you have a child without sex?" "Sex should be something quite different. Fundamentally different." "How so?" "Well, it's like this. Tell me, my dear future, loving Papa, why do you want your child to be born?" "What are you talking about?" Victor sat down on the bed in shock. "Everybody knows why. There's no two ways about it." "You're making yourself very clear, but still, let's be specific as to what you want and which way you want to go about it. Do you want our child to be born as a consequence, a side effect of your fleshly desires, or of our joint fleshly desires for that matter? Or would you rather see him as the desired offspring of our mutual love?" "I don't think a child would fancy being just a side effect." "So then, the offspring of love. But you see, you're not in love with me. Sure, you find me attractive, but that's not the same as love." "You are right, Inga. I find you very attractive." "There, you see, you're very attractive to me, but that's still a ways from love. We have to earn each other's love." "You must have been hitting some pretty strange reading material, Inga? Love is a feeling. It comes all by itself from goodness knows where, and it disappears goodness knows where. You earn somebody's respect, sure, but love?" "But it is precisely each other's love that we've got to earn, and our son will help us do it." "Our son? You feel that we're going to have a son?" "Why going to? It's already a fact." "What does that mean?" Victor jumped up. "Are you telling me you're already pregnant? You've been hiding it from me? Whose child is it? How far along is it?" "It's yours, and it has not started yet." "So it's not there at all?" "It is." "Listen here, Inga, I really have no idea what you're on about. You're talking some sort of nonsense. Can't you put it more clearly somehow?" "I'll try. You see, Victor, you've got this desire to have a child, and you've begun thinking about it. Then I got the same desire, and I too began thinking about it. We know today that human thought is material, and that means if we both have a mental concept of our child, it already exists." "And where is it now?" "I don't know. Maybe in some other dimension we don't know about. Maybe out there in some one of the galaxies of the universe, he's running barefoot through the stars and looking down on this blue earth where he's going to get material embodiment. Maybe he's now choosing the place and conditions that he'd like to be born in and wants to let us know. Can't you hear or feel what he's asking us?" Victor looked at Inga wide-eyed, as though seeing her for the very first time. She had never come out with reasoning like this before. He couldn't make up his mind whether she was serious or simply joking. But that phrase, "maybe he's now choosing where he would like to be born," stuck in his mind. People are born in all sorts of different places. Some are born in an aeroplane, on board ship, or in a motor car. Many people are born in hospitals and maternity wards, or some at home in the bathtub. They are born wherever it works out for them to be born. But where would children like to be born? For example, he, Victor, if he had had the opportunity and the choice, where would he like to have been born? In Russia, or in one of the best hospitals in England or America? But none of these alternatives struck him as being particularly appealing. Inga interrupted Victor's train of thought. "I've already worked out a detailed plan for our joint preparation for meeting our son." "What sort of plan?" "Listen to me carefully, my dear." Inga spoke decisively like never before. either sitting in an easy chair or pacing the floor. First, we've got to get ourselves in top-notch physical shape. From now on, we shouldn't smoke or drink. We have to do a thorough cleaning of our insides, starting with the kidneys and liver, with the help of various teas and fasting. I've already selected a method. From now on, we shall drink only spring water. That's very important. I'm already having 5 liters of spring water delivered every day. Sure, it costs twice as much in the stores, but never mind, we'll get by. Every day we need to do physical exercises to strengthen our muscles and intensify our blood circulation. We still need fresh air and positive emotions, which are not all that easy to come by. Victor liked Inga's decisiveness as well as her plan of action. Without giving her a chance to finish, he declared, "We'll buy the best workout equipment for our physical exercises, hire the best masseurs. I can send in one of my drivers to pick up spring water for us every day. The driver can also go and collect air from the forest. He can use a compressor to store it in cylinders under pressure. Then we can release the air in our little flat, a little at a time. Only I have no idea where we can get or buy positive emotions. Maybe we could go visit some fine resorts, or like a honeymoon trip. I mean it, a honeymoon." Victor's mood was getting more and more upbeat by the minute, thanks both to Inga's decisiveness and carefully thought-through approach to childbirth and to her desire to have a child by him. And he was glad to know that the son he had foreseen in his dream would be born not just by some flighty female interest mainly in money, but by Inga, who was taking such a serious and responsible approach to the matter. He really wanted to do something nice for Inga, whom he already considered to be the mother of his future son. He got up, quickly put on a suit, walked up to Inga and solemnly declared, "Inga, will you marry me?" "Of course I will," Inga replied in accord as she buttoned up her bathrobe. "Our son should have official parents, only there's no point in going to some fancy resort for our honeymoon. That doesn't fit in with my plan of preparation for childbirth." What does fit in then? Where else can we get positive emotions? "We should go around the outlying villages and find a spot that we both really like. It has to appeal to both of us, and that means it will appeal to our son too when he sees it. We'll buy a hectare of land there. You'll build a small house where our child's conception is to take place. I shall stay there all 9 months of my pregnancy, maybe with an occasional brief outing. We'll plant a new garden right there on our own very plot of land. I shan't give birth in a hospital, but in the little house on our family domain." Victor could not believe his ears. He could not believe that Inga, a smart, glamorous woman who used to be so keen on hanging out at fashionable clubs and popular resorts, could have changed her whole way of life so radically. On the one hand, he was flattered by Inga's vision. After all, she had his child in mind. On the other hand, did not this vision harbor just a hint of abnormality? He had heard from one of his friends of the existence of a series of books describing an unusual approach to childbirth. His friend had mentioned the importance of each family having their own hectare of land, and had given him this little book with a green cover called The Book of Kin. He had not gotten around to reading it, but he had heard that these books had been stirring up quite a controversy among the public. People who read them were beginning to change their whole way of life. All at once, Victor's eyes fell upon a pile of books with green covers lying on one side of the bed table. Lying on one of the bedside tables. He walked over and read the series title, Ringing Cedars of Russia. Among them was The Book of Kin. Victor now realized that all these unusual ideas Inga had about preparation for childbirth she had taken from these books, and she was getting ready to carry them out to the letter. He was still not quite sure whether this was a good or a bad thing. There was something disturbing about Inga's unusual and unquestioning conviction. It was as though an invisible someone had changed her views and her whole outlook on life. But had these books changed Inga for the better, or had they just made her a little quirky? Victor kept rehashing the question over and over in his mind and began to argue with her. "Inga, I know you got your ideas from these books. I've heard about them. Some people find them exciting. Others say there's a lot in them that's simply fairy tale-ish and cannot be proven. Maybe you should just shouldn't just automatically believe everything that's in them? Think about it. What's the point in our taking a plot of land and building a little house and wearing ourselves out planting trees? I've got enough to buy us a fine mansion with landscape grounds, a swimming pool, nice lawns, pathways, and a garden, if that's what you want. There's a lot of things we could buy, of course, Inga blurted out, very emotional for some reason. Even a facsimile of love. But I want us to plant our garden ourselves, all by ourselves, because I want to be able to say to my son when he grows up, see this apple tree, son, that pear tree and that cherry tree? I planted and watered them myself when you were just a little tyke. I did that for you. You were oh so little, and these trees were oh so little. Now you've grown, and they've grown too, and they've begun to bear fruit for you. I've tried to make the whole space around your little motherland nice and beautiful for you. Inga's outpouring of emotion was convincing, and Victor liked what he heard. He even started having regrets that nobody in his lifetime had been able to take him to a garden like that and say, this tree here was planted and grown for you by your parents. Yes, of course, Inga's right, thought Victor. Only why is she talking only about herself as though I don't exist? Feeling a bit slighted, he asked, Inga, why would you tell our growing son only about your part in this? Because you don't want to plant the garden, Inga calmly replied. What do you mean I don't want to? You bet I do, if it's important for our future. Well then, if we're going to do everything together, I will tell our son we planted this garden for him. That's more like it, Victor observed, comforted. For 2 months, Victor and Inga spent all their weekends driving around the outskirts of the city, looking for a place to build their future kin's domain. It was a most pleasant undertaking, and right at that time it seemed to Victor that there was no more important task in life than searching for the one place on the earth that would satisfy his soul and, consequently, that of his future son. And so it happened one day that they came to the edge of a deserted village about 30 kilometers outside the city. There it is, Inga said quietly, jumping out of the car first. I feel something here too, responded Victor. Later, they made a second trip to the place, spent a whole day looking over the site and talking with the local residents. They were told that the soil was not all that fertile, that the groundwater was fairly near the surface. But that did not faze Victor. He became more and more persuaded that this particular land, along with the little birches growing on it, as well as the sky and clouds above it, that all of this belonged to him and his future son, and to his and Inga's grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And if the ground was not all that fertile, no matter, he would make it fertile. It did not take long to draw up the documents to purchase 2 hectares of land, and after 4 short months the plot sported its own pretty, almost fairy tale cabin, built of kiln-dried logs. The cabin featured a sauna and a bio-toilet, along with the hot and cold running water straight from a well dug on the spot, and on the second floor a cozy bedroom with a window overlooking a forest and a lake. Inga designed the layout of the cabin with all its furnishings. She also came up with a plan for the landscaping. Together they planted cedars, firs, and pines around the perimeter of the lot, as well as little fruit tree saplings. Every evening, Victor would hurry home to his little cabin on his future domain, where the mother-to-be of his child was taking care of the home front. All the women Victor had known before not only receded into the background, they simply ceased to exist for him at all. Inga's radical approach to childbirth engendered new feelings in him. They were still not entirely clear to him, and they were probably quite different from traditional love, but he was quite convinced that he would never part from her, and only she could bear. It was only with her that he could build a future. The two of them went into Moscow together to attend courses on home childbirths. There was one peculiarity of Inga's that Victor found disconcerting, her outright refusal to have intimate relations with him. She kept insisting that their child should not be born as a result of fleshly lusts, but from man's infinitely greater and more meaningful desire. which was something else again. Now this time the author of these little green books has gone too far, thought Victor. Come on, could it really be possible to do away with the factor of fleshly desire completely? But one day, as he lay beside Inga on the bed, not having any kind of sex in mind, but only thinking only of his future son, he touched her breasts. Inga at once pressed against him and put her arms around him. In the morning, while Inga was still asleep, Victor headed over to the lake. The world around him seemed entirely different. It seemed unusual and joyful. What had happened the previous night he had never experienced before, either with Inga or with any of the other women he had known. This was no ordinary sex. It was an inspired impulse of creativity. Of course, people are born and people die, but if they never experience anything like this over their whole lifetime, they're missing something, maybe the most important thing. But thanks to Inga, it did not escape Victor, and he began to experience new, warm, yea, fervent feelings toward the one woman in his life, Inga. All 9 months of her pregnancy, Inga spent on the domain, going into town only occasionally. She had it all worked out where the baby pram would be kept, where the crib would stand. She even had Victor plant a modest-sized lawn where she could walk with her little son. Her contractions began a week ahead of the expected time. Their future son was apparently anxious to make his appearance in his marvelous space on the earth. From the information they had received during their childbirth courses, Victor knew what a father should do to assist during the labor, but the only rational thing he turned out to be capable of accomplishing was to ring up the midwife they knew and call for an ambulance and to stand by in case of an emergency. Inga had to draw the water in the bathtub all by herself, prepare the towel and measure the water temperature while he paced the room trying to think of what he should be doing, but he could not for the life of him recall what it was. With no husbandly help to count on, Inga climbed into the bathtub on her own. The contractions continued, but each time one occurred, she simply drew upon her beautiful voice to sound forth on notes of joy and triumph. Finally, out of all he had learnt during the courses, Victor managed to remember one thing: positive emotions. He glanced over the windowsill and saw the flower Inga had planted in the pot there. It was now in full bloom. He grabbed the flower pot and ran with it into the bathroom, exclaiming excitedly over and over again, "Inga, look, your flower's blooming! Your flower's blooming! It's just come out! Just now, look!" He was standing there holding the flower pot with his son's little body when his son's little body appeared in the bathtub. The midwife arrived only after Inga had already placed the tiny body on her tummy. Seeing Victor stand there holding the flower pot, she snapped, "Just what are you doing?" "I'm giving birth to a son," replied Victor. "Ah," the midwife nodded in agreement. "Then put your pot back on the windowsill and bring me—" "I need to tell all men," thought Victor, as he ran about the house for the umpteenth time. "True and lasting love comes only when, together with your beloved, you give birth to a long-desired child." I'm going to say that one more time. "I need to tell all men, true and lasting love comes only when, together with your beloved, you give birth to a long-desired child."